Okay, board members, if you could come on back, please.
Well, thank you for doing it. If we know where they are.
Sure, some will be in our LA.
Sure, hope so.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next item, which is item number 3.1, update on the activities of the Foundation for California Community Colleges. Mr. Lanning.
Thank you, and good morning and Happy New Year to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And we have a couple of items. One, you have in front of you the audited financial reports from the Foundation for this past year. This was reported on at the meeting at the Capitol some months back, but the formal audit report is now back, and it's our responsibility to provide that to you. So although we already had the discussion on the results, I wanted to make sure that you all had that today. And certainly we can answer any questions that might arise from that, certainly by email or in person or by phone at any time. So please feel free to peruse that at your leisure and contact me with any questions or comments you might have following that time. I want to note also that the board of directors for the foundation does have an open board seat now. James Sargent has retired after 8+ years of service to the foundation. He is a former board chair for the foundation and also a very significant donor to the organization. So I want to publicly thank him for his service over these many years. He's also the former foundation board chair at Cuesta College. He's been a fantastic friend of both the foundation and the community colleges for a number of years, but has decided to retire and travel the globe. So we wish him well. But we do have an open board seat. If anybody has ideas of candidates that would be welcome and worthy additions to our board, you all know the campaign that we're in right now that expires June 30th, but we are in the midst of many other exciting projects as well. So any names that come to mind, please contact me and let me know if you have any ideas whatsoever, and we can discuss further what we're looking for in candidates at this point. And finally, I want to really mirror everything else that's happened this morning, which is be rather quick in my report. But I do want to talk about an event that we talked about down at El Camino College at the last board meeting. And we had Ken Cragen present that day, I believe it was in November, and talk about our plans for Hands Across California as a fundraising mechanism for the OSHA initiative for California community colleges that we've been engaged in for 2.5 years, and of course, which expires on June 30th, the challenge grant from the OSHA Foundation. I'm happy to report that we received in December alone 2 $1 million gifts that were allocated to colleges in our system. Those will trigger, of course, $500,000 matching gifts from the OSHA fund. Each of those $1 million gifts will. We also have another $1 million plus gift pending for one of our colleges in the system. And we are in the midst of negotiating a very significant $5 million gift that could come to our colleges in Southern California. We're hoping to finalize that literally this month. That would benefit 21 colleges in the greater Los Angeles region. So, and that $5 million, of course, would trigger $2.5 million more from the OSHA initiative. So we're looking at some significant progress now being made this year. Of course, as we head toward the finish line, that's when you start to see the momentum build. Our hope is that we can continue that momentum and continue building our progress toward that ultimate goal of $100 million. If all of these gifts land, knock on wood or formica or whatever this material is, if all those gifts land in timely fashion, we will be north of $65 million in our endowment by the end of January in firm signed commitments. And keep in mind, again, that's a $65 million fund that 2.5 years ago was at zero. So we're very excited about where we're headed with this scholarship fund. That said, that means we still have $35 million yet to go, 2/3 of that for our own work to raise. So we're working with all of you, certainly all of the colleges and districts throughout the state, to continue on this initiative, this historic initiative that is taking advantage of the largest gift ever pledged to community colleges anywhere in this country, that is the OSHA gift. So with that, we talked with Ken Cragen at the last meeting of this group in November about an idea that he brought to us at the Fall Network Symposium in Palm Springs. And since that time, and literally in the last 2 months, we've been hard at work on executing on the idea that all of you were so excited about, I think, that day. And we're here today to talk to you about what that idea now has taken shape as, and that is a very significant public event, April 17th, a Sunday in April, You see on the screen in front of you or behind you our initial concept, and that is on April 17th, a single line of over 1,500 miles, over 1.5 million people joining together to call attention to the California Community College system and to touch as many of the colleges in our state as possible. We have an initial route planned out. We're working on the specific logistics right now. But going forward with this event, I want to talk a little bit about what it is, what it means, and where we're headed with it. You all have a postcard in front of you that is, in essence, a save the date card. We hope that you'll take that and the hundreds or thousands more of those that we can provide to you to distribute out to the field, to your constituents in your local areas, to your colleges, students, faculty, staff, families, alumni. We need everybody to get behind this event because this is our opportunity for that true grassroots outreach effort to drive this fundraising effort for the OSHA initiative and, of course, to drive attention to our colleges. This spring marks the 25th anniversary of Hands Across America, which, as you heard at the last meeting, Ken presented, was the single largest public demonstration in the history of this country. Over 6.5 million people came together that day to raise money for poverty, to fight poverty and homelessness. And this spring, we are replicating that event here in California during the 25th anniversary year with this effort to call attention to the community colleges, which, of course, in fighting poverty and fighting homelessness, the community colleges are one of those bridges to success for many people who are afflicted by those challenges. On April 17th, we are going to recreate that event with a line that circles California and connects almost all of our 112 colleges in really an unprecedented advocacy and fundraising opportunity for the endowment and for our colleges. This will be a unique opportunity for our sponsors and our partners and benefactors to not only take part in this initiative, the OSHA initiative, and in this event, a single one-time event that we've never really contemplated before, but really to make a difference in California. This, if we're successful, will be the single largest event in the history of higher education in this country, which makes sense given our status as the single largest system of higher education in this country. And so we're very excited about where we're headed with this event. You see in front of you a rough outline of what the route looks like. You see the colleges plotted on that map as well, so you can see that we are coming within relatively short driving distance or walking distance of about 100 of the 112 colleges. And as we break down by region, every region of the state will be represented. The northernmost college that we plan on this route is Butte College, and we've had talks already just Saturday with the Student Senate that the colleges in the northernmost part of the state are planning on busing down to Butte for that event so that they can all be involved in this event. And of course, in the south, we go down to San Diego and thereabouts. We go through the Inland Empire and the Central Valley. We go through the Bay Area. We go through the Central Coast, of course, and Orange County and Los Angeles. So we are reaching the population centers in our state. We are reaching the community college locations in our state for the most part. And except where geographically prohibitive, we are reaching out to literally every spot that we can with the intent that we can draw, again, over 1.5 million people and cover over 1,500 miles in one day with one line. And our hope is that we can count on all of you as spokespersons for the system to get behind this at the local level. Get in line that day, of course, but also spread the word between today and April 17th. Literally, the sprint starts right now, today, in the effort to create the public awareness that we need to be successful with this event. And toward that end, we're very excited, of course, to have the creator of the initial Hands Across America event 25 years ago, and We Are the World before that, in our corner working on this full time. But we are also very excited about the fact that we've gained other support already as well. You see just some of the folks that we are reaching out to. These are all alumni of our system. When you look at the names on this screen, you see the power of our system in terms of the potential public outreach that we could accomplish if we're successful in reaching to some of these people. We are already in conversation with some of these folks currently. We ask you right now, today, to help us in reaching out to anybody on this list or others on our list of prominent alumni that we have on the Affinity Online website. Anybody that you can reach out to and work with us on reaching out to help bring attention to this event. We are simply seeking their involvement, their ability to do public service announcements, their ability, of course, to stand in line that day, but also to call attention to this event. So we're very excited about what the potential here is. When and how does this event occur? Again, April 17th, one day, one line. Sunday, April 17th, joining nearly all the 112 colleges. A continuous human line stretching from San Diego to above Sacramento in a loop, unlike Hands Across America, where it was a point-to-point line, coast to coast. We are talking about a continuous loop, so we're literally traversing the length of California twice to join this loop together. So there is no break in the line. This will be a continuous loop and exceed 1,500 miles. And we actually, with all the anticipated zigzagging in Los Angeles, Orange County, and the Bay Area, we anticipate we may even approach 2,000 miles with this undertaking. With the event timeline and key activities already underway, of course, we've been engaged in project development and stakeholder and strategic partner development for the past couple of months. I was happy to announce a couple of months ago that Southern California Edison was very excited about getting on board. Of course, they were there at the last Board of Governors meeting to be recognized for their previous philanthropic commitments to our system, which now total $2.4 million toward the scholarship fund. But they are also the first corporate sponsor behind this event. And Jim Kelly, the executive vice president at Southern California Edison, who is a Rio Hondo College alumnus and spoke of his personal experience at the college as the real motivator for his entire career and really what turned his path around when he was a young man at the symposium, was the first to get on board with this, and he has since committed the company's support and his own active engagement in this event. Since that time, Melanie Lundquist, who many of you have met at various events that we've hosted over the past couple of years as well, is also on board. And we are also in discussion with a number of other corporate benefactors about this event and their ability to really, with one small investment, relatively small, make a tremendous impact in our system. We are very happy also that Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas from the County of Los Angeles is on board with this, has lent his active support in a couple of ways. One, his communications director is a gentleman by the name of Ed Maddox. Ed Maddox was a point person for Hands Across America in 1986 and has also worked in the Clinton and Carter administrations and is a former executive with BET. Mr. Maddox is now working full-time on this project as a loan to us from Supervisor Ridley Thomas's office on a 4-month grant, essentially. So we have Mr. Maddox's full-time cooperation and involvement on this project. He, of course, will serve as our point person with much of the outreach that we'll be engaged in at the political levels as well as in community groups throughout the state of California, obviously in Los Angeles, but also throughout the state. Mr. Maddox brings a tremendous wealth of experience in this event, having been at the front lines of Hands Across America 25 years ago, but also having been involved in a number of other significant events over the years, from presidential inaugurations to entertainment industry affairs. So he's certainly somebody that brings a great value to us. Also, Mayor Villaraigosa in Los Angeles, another alumnus of our system. On January 31st, we'll be speaking at a luncheon that Melanie Lundquist and her husband Richard are hosting. Mayor Villaraigosa has pledged his support to this event and will be formally stating so at that luncheon on January 31st. All of you have an invitation to that luncheon sitting in front of you, and I hope that many, if not all of you, can attend that day to not only show your support for this event, but also to recognize this exciting opportunity for us to engage leadership in an event that is not calling for more public investment, not calling for a change in legislative action, but simply calling for activism among our communities to get involved and support the community colleges, and in particular to support students. And that's what this event is all about, and that's what certainly the endowment is all about, is providing financial support for students who cannot afford textbooks, cannot afford software and uniforms that they need to be able to matriculate through college. So keep in mind that every dollar raised, the net of every dollar raised from this event is matched by the Osher commitment. In going forward, the participant registration page on the website went live literally this weekend. You can now log on to handsacrosscalifornia.org, go to the Get Involved tab, and you can register for your place in line. And we encourage all of you to do that and to start certainly spreading the word that everybody else can do that as well. We encourage you not only to register, but then also anybody can create their own personal fundraising page, just as you would for a marathon or a bike race or a walk or what have you, and collect pledges from your friends and family and neighbors and so on to be allocated toward the Osher endowment and toward the undertaking that we're engaged in here. So please take a moment to look at that site, take a moment to register, and take a moment to get involved and start sharing those pages with your friends and family so that we can start to build the buzz around this event. Participant registration is, as I mentioned, underway. There will be a completely new website design going live this week. The template for it is already built. We're in the process of programming the rest of the inclusions on the site right now, but I think you'll see a very exciting web presence released in the next couple of days. We're also planning on a significant press announcement probably next month. We want to time it so that there is time to build the buzz before the event, but of course also to stay in the public eye long enough for April 17th to actually get here. So our goal is to mount a series of announcements as time goes forward, working with some major media partners as well as some technology partners right now, and we're hoping for some exciting announcements to come in the next couple of months. But ultimately, our goal is also a very, very traditional grassroots effort. In every city and town throughout California, we want you to spread the word and to get people excited about this event. This is an event that hasn't even been conceived of since the original and 25 years ago in terms of an event of this size and scope. There has not been anything closely approximating this, and certainly not for higher education and for student support. We anticipate continuing with a media outreach campaign and social media campaign. The Facebook and Twitter applications are already built and active. I encourage any of you who use either one of those tools to find us and like us or friend us or whatever the technology term of the day is, but like us, friend us, and follow us, and start retweeting and reposting our statuses and sending out to your friends the links and the updates and the news items that are being published on those sites and pages and feeds. And we encourage you just to start talking about this, as I said, from today forward. The sprint is now on. We have just over 3 months between now and the actual day of the event. And by that time, I expect we'll have about $20 million to raise. So toward our ultimate goal of course, that $100 million goal. And again, that OSHER campaign that is underway, we have until June 30th, so that the timing of this event really is just about perfect in the sense that it allows us to collect pledges and commitments both toward this event, but also to benefit from the OSHER commitment in doing so. And in the weeks and months after the event, certainly, hopefully, reach our ultimate goal of that $100 million endowment. Moving forward, we have, as a reminder to all of you, this graphic that really depicts how the endowment is built. You have all seen this before in a number of different presentations that I've given over the months and years, the last 3 years. But just as a reminder, we received a $25 million initial gift from the OSHER Foundation to create the California Community College Scholarship Endowment in 2008. That endowment has already awarded thousands of students in our state with $1,000 scholarships the last 2 years. As we raise the additional $50 million that is our goal, that triggers the additional $25 million more from the OSHER Foundation, all of those adding up to a $100 million total endowment. And the net proceeds, again, from this event will all feed into that endowment fund and will trigger matching dollars from the OSHER fund. Our outreach, of course, we're a relatively skeleton staff. The foundation has 112 full-time employees, but we do not have 112 that are dedicated to event marketing and promotion. So we have a staff, a very small staff, about 6 or 7 folks that are involved in this on a full-time, regular basis. But we're also working with outreach to the student groups throughout the state. We presented at the Student Senate meeting on Saturday, and they were very, very vocal in their excitement about this event. Reed Milburn, to my left, you've all met at some point or other in the past, I believe. She's a former Student Senate president statewide. She is on our staff for the next 4 months in working with those students and the colleges in coordinating the outreach that we're engaged in with the student groups throughout the state. We're very excited to have Reed aboard. To my right is Jill Schofield, who is the Director of Public Relations for the Foundation and is managing our media relations efforts, working with not only Ken Cragen and Ed Maddox, but also, of course, with the major media outlets throughout the state and with the local campus-based media outreach efforts that we'll be engaged in at all 112 colleges. We're also looking to recruit 112 community college paid coordinators, and those would be students at each of our 112 campuses that would serve as a local coordinator and representative to this statewide effort, and would be coordinating those efforts at the local levels. And we'll be actually releasing, we promoted it to the Student Senate over the weekend, and we'll be sending out to all of the student leadership groups throughout the system a call for applications for these positions. And I hope that we can recruit that local involvement at the student level to go along with all of the other outreach efforts that we're engaged in. In addition, there are 92 community college foundations. We've all talked about those foundations many times in the past, and we're leaning on them going forward to get their involvement, their outreach to alumni, their outreach to their donor bases, their outreach to their community and civic groups, and to, of course, corporate backers in the communities in which they reside, to get their involvement as well. And we'll also be working, of course, with the PIOs throughout the system. The Student Senate, as I mentioned, we've already engaged, and they are very, very excited. I have to say, Saturday's meeting with them was a very exciting and uplifting, I think, occasion, not only for us, but for them as well, to focus on something so positive as this in a time when we're seeing so many negative things come out in the news. The Faculty Association has already endorsed this event. I have yet to even meet with them yet, and they've already endorsed the event, and we're very excited to have their involvement. And we really believe that, and I have to say this, the outreach to the students, we've talked about this with other programs the foundation operates, such as College Buys. Outreach to the students is really so important, but our engagement of faculty in reaching out to the students is even probably more important, because they are the ones who are in front of students on a day-to-day basis. And also, ultimately, they are the ones who see the benefit of these funds reaching out to students and continuing their ability to matriculate toward degrees. We're very excited to have the faculty involved and hope to engage them really at the local level throughout the system. And we hope to have faculty from throughout the state in line that day as well. And the same holds true, of course, for staff and administrators at every campus throughout the system. Finally, we are hoping with the advent of the coordinators at the local levels to also create campus volunteer committees on every campus, where the local college committees will then be coordinating their local efforts in community outreach, in PR on the campus as well as in the community, and in coordinating activities and events at the local level that will help drive attendance on the day of the event. So as you can see, we have a few things going on and a lot to do in the next 3 months. Our hope is that we can get all of you involved. I think, if I can be so bold as to say, we expect all of you to get involved and make a commitment to stand with us on April 17th. Register on the site, handsacrosscalifornia.org. There is a temporary site up currently. That redesigned site will be up this week, potentially as soon as today or tomorrow. Create your own unique fundraising page on the Get Involved tab. You can click to our partner. There's a site put out by a company by the name of First Giving that is our partner in this effort to create the fundraising apparatus. All of you can create a personalized fundraising page. You can upload your own videos and photos and stories. Those of you who are in Hands Across America can talk about the event that happened 25 years ago and how important it was, and how this event is symbolic of civic engagement and the ability to raise funds to benefit students forever. Keep in mind that every dollar raised for the endowment will benefit students not only now, but for every year, forever. That endowment is permanent and will award scholarships in perpetuity. Rally support from friends and family, of course, by encouraging their participation. And we are accepting applications for student campus coordinators. If you want to spread the word about that, we encourage you, those of you who are on college campuses in particular, to do that. And you see Reed's email address on the site, on the page in front of you. And for general inquiries, please contact us at the email address on the screen there, as well as at the phone number on the screen. But all of you know where to find me, and Jill and Reed and Shiloh London is our point person on our staff, handling many of the event logistics, working with Mr. Cragen. We have others involved as well, of course, in various aspects of this event, but we encourage all of you to seek us out and get us involved in any way possible. We'll be traversing the state on a regular basis over the next 3 months, talking about this at the local levels. Encourage any group you can to invite us anywhere you can to speak about this if needed. We can do webinars, we can do visits, we can do phone calls, we can do emails, we can do additions to websites for anybody who's out there and seeking our engagement. So with that, we have a mountain to climb, but we're a heck of a lot closer now than we were 2.5 years ago to our ultimate goal. And our hope is that this will push us toward that final goal that we do have that is coming so soon. With that, I want to open it to any questions in the time that we have that I might answer, or suggestions.
Member Mahomet.
What is the time of day that this event is going to happen?
We're looking right now at, and we have not announced a formal specific time, but we've reserved a noon to 2 p.m. time block with the anticipation that based on events that are happening throughout the state, ball games and so forth, we anticipate somewhere around 1 o'clock that day would be the target time.
And what are you envisioning as the events that are going around, as people are gathering in a spot, what kind of?
That's where we hope to work with the local campuses and other civic groups. For example, we've talked about doing concerts in various locations where it might be difficult to draw. For example, if you picture up and down the Central Coast or up and down the Central Valley, where there are wide swaths of space that don't have large population centers, we anticipate trying to put a concert or a festival of some sort on in those locations that will draw people for more than just standing in line that day, but also for, of course, the engagement in a major event of some sort. And we're approaching a variety of entertainment providers to talk about how we could engage them in that effort. We're also looking at, of course, that's early in the baseball season, we're looking at which teams are at home that day. It being a Sunday, they will have home day games for the most part. And we're looking at engaging those teams, not just the Major League teams, but the California League, which is Class A, and the Pacific Coast League, which is AAA teams in those venues that are hosting games that day to encourage their involvement. And again, to do everything from getting all the fans in the ballpark to stand up and hold hands during the time of the event to having the line snake right past the stadium at the beginning of the games, things of that nature. Again, to do what Ken has always talked about, which is fill the line, and everything else will happen once we fill the line.
And can you remind me, I got so excited when he was presenting, how did he initially think of this or become involved with us?
He spoke at the Network of California Community College Foundation's annual symposium in October about the whole concept of making the impossible possible. And with the upcoming 25th anniversary, which we are now in this year, he was talking about what they did for Hands Across America, what they did for We Are the World. And then he said in front of a crowd of 400 folks at the banquet that night, and Member McDonald, Member Baca were in the room. He said, Paul and I have been talking about restaging Hands Across America as Hands Across California. What do you all think? And that kind of roped me into doing this without us having discussed it at length yet. And so all of a sudden the impossible became imperative. And from the imperative comes this plan. And ultimately, I would say it is imperative because we have this monumental and historic opportunity to reach this endowment goal that will never be available to us again unless we meet this goal. And this event that Ken is certainly the creator of and has done in the past. Ken is also the creative force behind NetAid in 1998 with Cisco Systems. That was one of the first online mass appeal events to ever take place on the internet. And so with that engagement, and now with Ed Maddox aboard, with Supervisor Ridley Thomas aboard, with Mayor Villaraigosa behind this, we're starting to see the momentum build already. And it's just January. We're all still recovering from our New Year's hangovers, I think. But we're underway now, and we're hitting the ground running. And as students return to classes, and as faculty return to the classrooms, we're hoping that this will start to build the buzz that we anticipate that it needs, certainly, to succeed. But we're talking about 1.5 to 2 million people coming out. That is something that is not common certainly in this generation, and it would be, I think, a real morale boost for California to see this succeed, not just for the endowment, but just for the morale of the state as well.
Thank you.
Member Price and Member Baum.
I just would like to request a large stack of these if possible.
We have actually several thousand available. We can load you down with as many as you can pack.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Okay. Member Baum.
On a little bit of a separate issue, I was talking to some foundation officers last week at an event. And they said there's a structural challenge that foundation officers face within the system, that most districts do not allow access to the foundation to the alumni database. Now, the district where I am, Pasadena, I do believe that there is an alumni database. Is there and they were saying that there's a policy direction that the Board of Governors can take to encourage the foundation's ability to reach out to alumni at various community colleges to engage them in efforts such as this.
I think you're referring to the various districts' interpretations of FERPA guidelines.
Correct.
FERPA guidelines are interpreted at the local level to, in some cases, restrict access to alumni records. What we've been approached about in the past is issuing a formal opinion from the statewide foundation on that topic. I am reticent to do so because I don't feel that's our place. The Board of Governors would be an appropriate body, perhaps, to take that on as an interpretation. That said, it's something that is a roadblock in many districts and at many college foundations in working with the campus and their records, certainly their alumni records. There is a bit of a disconnect between the databases available and what the foundations can do with them.
But that's something that, as Paul says, that the Board of Governors can commission an opinion that would give ammunition to the foundations to actually move that along, because as we recognize the need to increase the diversity of our funding sources, we can't close the door to actually letting alumni know that they have an opportunity to continue to support their institutions. And so at some point, I hope that we take this on as a governing board.
Let me ask Steve Bruckman, do you have a comment on that and/or a opinion?
It is certainly something that we would be happy to look into. I think we would work closely with the foundation and make sure we understand what their reservations are. We don't want to complicate issues for districts. Federal FERPA is the Federal Educational Right to Privacy Act, and it is a very complicated law. And depending on how colleges set up their databases, there may or may not be access, but we could look into it.
So maybe if I could ask, maybe you could have a discussion with Mr. Lanning on that and bring back some information to the board to see if we wanted to pursue it further.
Yes,
Is that
we can
good
do that.
with the rest of the members? Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Member Barreras.
Yes, I just had some comments. First of all, congratulations. This is a great event. And living in the Central Valley, I just want to say that we will try to do anything that we can to support this effort. But I did just want to make a couple of suggestions in terms of the groups that you're doing the outreach to. I didn't see the classified senate, academic senates out there, union groups that are also at the local levels. I think they'd be willing to participate and help in terms of doing that and doing some of the outreach.
And toward that end, we'll be speaking to the Consultation Council on the 20th, which, of course, all of those groups are represented on, and that's our first step to reaching out to all of those groups. So thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you.
Member McDonald.
I'd like to send a thank you. In fact, my cohort, Manuel Bach, and I from the Veterans Committee want to send a thank you to the Foundation and Paul Lanning and his crew for help and support in our Veterans panel discussion that we had at the consultation, at the League conference. Thank you very kindly. It was very, very successful. We really appreciated your support, and part of our student success and part of our process going forward this year to highlight those positive things that have happened. We want to say thank you for making one of those things happen for us. It was really, really well accepted. It went very, very well, and again, just thank you.
Our pleasure.
Member Davis-Lyman.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate you because I was in the room, in this very room, when you kind of rolled the project out, and the excitement was palpable. I mean, it was just hitting the walls, and so I'm sure that will be carried through as people get involved and know the importance of leaving this lifelong legacy. It's a chance we have with the Osher Foundation. So congratulations.
Thank you. A lot of work to do.
Any other comments? Let me just ask, going back, if you could tell me, and maybe Member Reed would like to say something, this audit here,
Yes.
I haven't had a time to read or anything, but can you tell me what it says? Basically, I mean, are you pleased with this audit?
Yes,
Are there some issues?
and we shared at the Board of Governors meeting at the Capitol, I think it was 2 meetings ago now.
Okay.
Basically what this contains, which is our financial results for the past fiscal year, which ended June 30th. We recorded our first net positive results in the last 4 years, I believe it is. And we're seeing upticks in certain program areas. We, of course, are benefiting from As a couple of our major grants have wound down, the Moore Foundation investment in nursing and the Gates Foundation investment in early college high schools, both of which wound down this past year, we have seen other programs take hold, and our college buys program is growing. Certainly our progress with the OSHA initiative is seen in some of the report here, but even since that time, and of course that now is 6 months ago, we've announced 2 significant new programs that are now taking shape this fiscal year, and that one of those is the California Connects program, which is a digital literacy program funded by a federal stimulus grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce. And the other is the Vroom project, which is an air quality program funded by a class action settlement from the state of California. So those 2 significant, one a $20 million grant, the other a $10.9 million grant, both of them 3-year grants, are showing that we're continuing to grow and evolve as the needs of our communities change, and as the needs of our colleges, of course, change. We're trying to respond to those. We're continuing with our alumni outreach work, where we have the ability to engage alumni, working with the colleges and districts, and particularly with their foundations. And ultimately, we've also, of course, engaged in a number of cost containment measures that have allowed us to reach that positive net cash flow for the year, despite many of the challenges that we've had with some of the funding.
Right. So basically, you're pleased with the audit. Your board
I'm very
is pleased with
yes.
the audit's findings.
Yes, and I'm pleased with the fact that this is, I think, the first step in an ongoing fiscal health management issue for the foundation. We've had some significant, I think, challenges over the past 3-4 years to overcome. I think now we're seeing the evidence that they are, in fact, being overcome, and that we're creating a sustainable organization for the future.
Great. Thank you.
I do want to mention real quickly before I depart that the next Foundation Board of Directors meeting, which of course is open to all, is scheduled for January 24th. That will be in San Diego, and if any of the board members would like to attend that, please let me know. I'm more than happy to provide that information. Member Reed will be there, of course. I believe Member Himmelstein may or may not be able to attend part of the meeting, but all of you are always welcome to those meetings, and we certainly encourage you to drop in at any point. I think that's all I have.
Good. Thank you very much. Member Reed.
I might just add that speaking for my colleagues on this board, that we appreciate the continued support the foundation has given to the Chancellor's office and to our board specifically in terms of our abilities to travel and to engage with the various districts that we have in our system and so forth. And we continue to appreciate your support from the foundation on that effort.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Member Baum.
Given that there's an opening, and then we also had the situation with our Board of Governors member, Henry Ramos, is there any thought to transferring his appointment to the board from Board of Governors representative to a...
There has been some initial discussion about that topic. We're awaiting essentially some resolution of that matter before we move too quickly. And given the fact that we do have some flexibility there, because we do have an open seat in addition to, of course, the seat that he occupied as a Board of Governors member, we're essentially in a wait-and-see mode to see what happens with that appointment. If it does, in fact, get resolved soon, then we can address that. In the meantime, I would encourage this board to think about, in preparation for the next board meeting, the possibility that you may have a second appointment then open, depending on what happens with the resolution of the Ramos matter.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move to item 3.2, Vice-Chancellor Garcia, update on state and federal legislation.
I believe you've all received handouts on the state legislative update, and I don't happen to see the federal update. Do you have that with you? No. Okay, I'll make sure you get that. I'll briefly cover both state and federal updates. As you know, the legislature and the constitutional officers began work this past week with the inauguration of Governor Jerry Brown. There was a lot of buzz about who would be part of his new administration. And we almost received information daily on new appointments. I think it's fair to say they have been trickling out. But there are some key appointments that have been made, and we still await several other appointments. But Governor Jerry Brown has announced two joint or co-executive secretaries, essentially serving in the role as chiefs of staff. He appointed Jim Humes, who served with him as legal counsel in the Attorney General's office, who will be handling administration, legal affairs, and policy. He also appointed Nancy McFadden, who will be overseeing legislation appointments and policy as well. Those are some very broad areas, and normally what a governor would do is also appoint several additional cabinet members to oversee legislation, specifically appointment secretary, and we've yet to hear word on whether there will be those specific appointments or how they will be appointed. But for now, as I believe Chancellor Scott updated you on a lot of the specifics, Josh Gropin is another person who's been appointed who will be doing some work on appointments, but we've yet to hear about a specific appointment secretary, which of course is a key person for us and the Board of Governors. And you also know that he appointed his wife, Ann Gus Brown, as special counsel to advise him on, I assume, a variety of areas, and this is an unpaid position. In addition to the new administration getting organized, last week we also had a number of inaugurations for state constitutional officers. In a moment you're going to be hearing with State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson, who had his inauguration event last Monday, and he'll be talking with you in just a moment about his vision for K-12 and the relationship he hopes to maintain with the community colleges and higher education. There's a lot of movement at the staff level. This, of course, affects my work in terms of who I deal with on a daily basis. So that's a big part of what I'm focusing now, trying to figure out who I will work with in the various departments as well as within K-12, but also committees. And just last week, Senate Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg announced the appointment of all of his committee chairs and vice chairs. He has not yet announced who the membership of all the committees are, and I'm pleased to report our new Senate Education chairperson is Senator Alan Lowenthal, who we're delighted to be working with, and who obviously understands our issues, and we have a lot of close relationships with him, so that should be a very productive and helpful relationship we have with the chairman. The Assembly, and we also have Senator Carol Liu, who will be the sub-chair of our Education Budget Committee. So she too will be a key person for us and someone we'll be working closely with, and also sits on the Student Success Task Force. On the Assembly side, Speaker John Perez announced his committees and the whole committee membership December 15th. And Assembly Member Marty Block will continue to serve as chairman of the Assembly Higher Education Committee. The vice chair will be Assembly Member Tim Donnelly, who will be new to that position. And then there are a number of different members who've been appointed to that committee. You have all this information listed in your state legislative update, so I won't go into any more detail other than to say all the appointments that have been made so far relating to community colleges are in your update. In addition, we've highlighted a few of the bills that have already been introduced. This is the very beginning of the process, and you have a brief summary of each of the major bills that we think will have a direct impact on community colleges. Look at that at your leisure, and I will say that most of these bills continue to be spot bills or bills that we've seen before. For example, AB 2 by Assemblymember Portantino is higher education accountability. This is a bill that has been introduced several times and relates to establishing goals and benchmarks for higher education. This bill is is basically in the same form it was last year, and frankly, our chancellor at one point carried a similar bill, and I think that there's some strong interest in identifying goals for higher education with those benchmarks to determine whether we're making steady progress toward those goals. We have a couple more AB 540 related bills by Assemblymember Donnelly, and this would be to make changes to AB 540 and instead give additional benefits to veteran students. So I would suggest you take a look at this. Most of these bills are still in the early stages and a lot changes, and when we meet back in March, my staff and I will have a more thorough analysis of the key bills, and at that point we will have had a chance to talk to staff and members about what the real intent is in these bills. So in the very beginning stage, a lot of times these bills are placeholders, and they give you an indication of where their interests lie, but they usually change pretty significantly as the session moves on. I think that's probably the last. That's my report on state legislative activities. If there are any questions, I can answer them now.
Member Malumed?
Am I correct, is Senator Liu going to be the chair of a subcommittee on community colleges or higher education? Has that been announced yet?
No, it hasn't been formally announced, as I understand. I've heard some talk about that, but I haven't seen anything formal.
And in my memory, I think there was a subcommittee on community colleges in the Assembly. Was that Fiona Ma?
Actually, Assemblymember Mary Hayashi.
Hayashi, is that still functioning? Is that still going to be around this year?
I haven't seen that announced.
Okay.
But there also was a select committee on higher education when Chancellor Scott was senator. And so there's been a history of having select committees that look, and generally the way the select committees work is they convene hearings. They don't vote on bills, and they can make recommendations to the full committee, or they can use these hearings to inform the development of legislation. But they don't have the authority to vote on bills.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just switch quickly to the federal report, this will be brief. We all were watching what would happen to our earmarks, and everyone around the country, as a matter of fact. And as I mentioned earlier, the omnibus bill that contained all the earmarks was defeated. So we'll be starting over, and we are preparing we will be resubmitting the veterans earmark request, and we're also looking to we're in the process of developing a financial aid earmark, an earmark that would focus on supporting 5 to 10 pilot projects in California to look at new ways to streamline the process to help more students participate in state and federal financial aid programs. And there are a number of best practices out there, so it would be an opportunity to fund some of these best practices at a time when our financial aid officers are inundated with additional demand, as well as in the midst of budget cuts. So we're going to use those two issues as a focal point of California's specific request when we go to Washington, D.C. on December 13th. In addition, we're going to be working closely with ACCT and AACC, the national community college organizations that represent the presidents and trustees throughout the country, and follow their lead on key issues that will be upcoming in this next Congress. We don't have a clear sense of what that will be, and it sounded like a lot of focus is still trying to sort out the new dynamics in the House, as well as in the Senate. So they're in a similar place that we are here in California, adjusting to the new changes. So we'll be hearing more about that, and I'll report to you as we learn more about the details in Congress. And the last focus of our federal relations efforts will be to really look at where we have an ability to pursue grant funds. And our target agencies are the U.S. Department of Ed, U.S. Department of Labor, and the U.S. Department of Health, because there seem to be some workforce-related opportunities that are connected to healthcare reform. However, that however that materializes. So we'll be looking at those 3 areas and hopefully be able to identify places where the Community College Chancellor's Office and Board of Governors can work with community college partners around the state where where it makes the most sense. So, for example, on the financial aid pilot, we're going to look at how we can partner with specific districts that may be interested in going after an earmark. When you go after an earmark, you can target your statewide senators, and then the funding you get would be available statewide. We've already asked Senator Feinstein to carry our veterans earmark, and we're hopeful that she'll carry it again next year. But we may not be able to have Senator Feinstein carry the financial aid. So what we'll want to look at is where we can get a strong legislator or member of Congress to carry that kind of earmark for us, but then it would have a more local focus rather than the statewide focus. So those are some of the issues we're looking at. Are there any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Go to Jerry. Are we prepared for 3.3?
No.
No. Okay. How about 3.4?
Yes, we should be.
Are we prepared for that? Okay, let's move to 3.4, update on the implementation of Senate Bill 1440, our student transfer bill.
This one is going to be a little controversial, or some of these aren't as controversial. I don't know whether we can move those up to today or not. I think give some thought about after lunch. Yeah. These.
Vice-Chancellor Garcia.
President Himmelstein and members, if I may, I didn't see my new staff person that I wanted to introduce this morning, but she wasn't in the room. And she's come in right now. This is Mary Moyle. She's just joined us in government relations, and we're delighted to have her. She comes with significant experience working in the legislature. She's worked with a number of senators and assembly members, as well as Cal State Sacramento in the California Center for California Studies. And she's hitting the ground running, and we're delighted to have her join our staff. I also have an executive fellow working with us this year who participated in a very competitive process, and we were fortunate to have her assigned to our office. Her name is Stephanie Puentes, and she's working with us between now and next August. And I don't know if she's in the room. I don't see her. And she was a recent graduate of UC Berkeley. She did an internship in Washington, D.C. for Congressman George Miller, and she's going to be helping us and coordinate the Washington, D.C. trip. So we're delighted to have her on staff as well.
Great. Welcome. Vice Chancellor Michalowski.
Great. Thank you very much. We are very pleased to be able to provide you a very positive report on the implementation of SB 1440. This is the legislation that was carried by Senator Padilla that provides for guaranteed transfer to the California State University system for community college students who earn an associate degree for transfer that contains certain key elements. This bill would not have happened not only without the obvious commitment of Senator Padilla, but without the tremendous commitment and efforts of Chancellor Scott and his good friend Chancellor Charlie Reed. Those two individuals have cut through barriers that have existed forever in the realm of transfer between the community colleges and the CSU. And this is a wonderful time in history that we have them both in positions of leadership when they can make world-changing events happen. So having worked with transfer programs for many, many years, I'm extremely grateful to still be here during this time in history to make such wonderful progress. SB 1440 indicates that to earn an associate degree that's designated for transfer, a student must complete 60 transferable units that include the standardized general education patterns, either the intersegmental general education transfer curriculum that can be transferred to either the University of California or the CSU, or CSU's general education breadth requirements that they have developed specifically in addition to the IGETC option. And a student must also complete at least 18 units in a major or area of emphasis as defined by the community college. And this is consistent with existing Title V requirements for all associate degrees, that they must contain at least 18 units in a major or area of emphasis. In addition, a community college may not require any additional local graduation requirements to attain this associate degree. And often, community college faculty have included PE requirements in their associate degrees, or perhaps ethnic studies, or other kinds of courses that they believe are important to a well-rounded graduate. However, unless those kinds of courses can be taken as electives or as part of general education, but may not, the college may not add any requirements to prevent a student from being able to transfer. And in order to earn this degree, a student must have a GPA of at least 2.0. When a student completes an associate degree for transfer, the CSU shall, and this is a quote from the statute, shall guarantee admission with junior status. Now, admission to the CSU does not guarantee admission to a specific major or a specific campus. And there are certain challenges that we are working on in implementing the bill to address this. However, the CSU shall grant a student priority admission to his or her local CSU campus and to a program or major that is similar to the community college major in which the degree was earned. Now, you'll note the words local and similar are underlined in this PowerPoint, and that signifies that those terms are currently being defined by the SB 1440 Implementation Committee. And there is certainly significant room for interpretation in both of those areas. But we have a very collaborative process of working both among the faculty and among the systems as a whole to address these issues and come to a common understanding of what they mean. In addition, when a student completes the associate degree and transfers to the CSU, CSU cannot require the student to take more than 60 additional units to earn a degree in a standard major that requires 120 units for graduation. There are certain majors that require a larger number of units, and those will be specified by the CSU. But for the typical baccalaureate degree, 60 additional units is all that CSU can require. In addition, the CSU cannot require students to repeat courses that are similar to courses that were included in their community college degree. And that's an issue that has been long frustrating for students when they feel that they have to take coursework, lower division coursework, again at the CSU that they've already completed at the community college. Now, these changes are not only going to ease the pathway for students, but the efficiencies in these changes are tremendous for both the CSU and the community college system. We've estimated that by making sure that students have a straight pathway and are not required to repeat courses at the CSU, the state will save $160 million that can enable access for an additional 40,000 community college students and 14,000 CSU students with exactly the same state investment that is currently made. Now, Chancellor Scott and Chancellor Reed jointly called for us to create an SB 1440 Implementation and Oversight Committee to both facilitate coordination and to ensure that the goals of SB 1440 are met. We convened the committee. It has met twice in November and December, and the work is extremely collaborative and going very well. The committee established subcommittees that are working on transition issues to bring this new approach to transfer into the arena of practice, and also a subcommittee on impaction issues. Now, that relates to the fact that virtually all CSU campuses are oversubscribed in at least some majors, in a couple of cases in all majors, and in a number of cases the entire campus is defined by the CSU system as impacted. And when that occurs, the requirements for admission to the campus are increased because the pool of students who wish to transfer has to be limited based on spaces that are funded. So that has been an extremely problematic issue for our students wishing to transfer, and so we are actively engaging in a conversation about how to minimize those barriers and how to make the SB 1440 transfer pathway work under those circumstances. We have come to agreement in the committee that whatever additional requirements are placed on students will involve perhaps a higher GPA to be admissible when there aren't enough spaces to meet the applicant pool. However, we have agreement that the CSU will no longer add course requirements to parse down the eligible population for transfer. Because once you add a course requirement, then a student who's been pursuing the pathway is blocked until they can get into that additional course at a community college and complete it. SB 1440 is very clear that students shall know what they have to do to be able to transfer to the CSU when they begin their transfer coursework, and should not have blockages put in their way at the last minute. The SB 1440 Implementation and Oversight Committee is co-chaired by Executive Vice-Chancellor Skinner and his counterpart from the CSU, their Executive Vice-Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer Ephraim Smith. I've listed the community college members for you, including our CEO member, Eli Oakley, who is here. We're very happy to have him, and we have a very dedicated and well-versed professional group of people who are working on this with their direct counterparts from the CSU system. And so I am now going to turn this over to Academic Senate President Jane Patton to talk to you about the other side of implementing SB 1440 in terms of the curriculum for the new associate degrees for transfer.
Thank you, President Himmelstein and members of the board. I'm delighted to be here today because we truly have good news and some very positive progress in the area of 1440. When the bill first was signed into law, it occurred to me that there were sort of two pathways we could take, and I call them Plan B or Plan A. Is the microphone on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let me tell you what Plan B would be. We have 112 colleges, and each of them would develop different degrees for their majors at that campus. Now, if you do a little bit of arithmetic, you'll realize that very soon you've got thousands and thousands of different degrees across the state, and CSU is compelled to accept them all with highest priority. Now, that sounded pretty chaotic to us, and so we thought, well, what would be another approach? And we're calling that Plan A. Plan A is what if we had a concerted statewide response to SB 1440, and what if we developed a transfer model curriculum that's developed by the intersegmental discipline faculty. Plan A is what we are implementing, although technically Plan B is legal, but we are really urging people to stick with the Plan A. So let me tell you a little bit about how that's playing out. I need to back up and remind you of something you've heard a little bit about before, and that's the course identification numbering system, which is being developed by the community colleges with a grant from the Chancellor's office through the Academic Senate. Course ID is a supra-numbering system which takes our courses and writes descriptors, like what would the content be in an English 1A class? What would the content be for an Introduction to Sociology course? And then once courses all agree with that descriptor, they get a CID number. Now, this initiative is happening with intersegmental discipline faculty coming together. So we hold meetings for the history faculty and meetings for the math faculty, and they design what they think the course content should be statewide, and then the courses get the CID numbers. Well, because we have the CID system in place, we can use those CID discipline groups that are already getting together, the CSU and community college discipline faculty, to ask them another question. What would the transfer model curriculum be? What would the best lower division preparation be in your major? So what should students take at the community colleges if they're getting a sociology degree? What should they take if they're getting a math degree, et cetera? So what they've done is they've developed drafts of a transfer model curriculum, and we vet them online so that discipline faculty can say, yes, that's a great transfer model curriculum, or, oh no, you forgot this, you need to make some changes, or we don't even teach that course. And we get statewide faculty input on the model curriculum. Once the model curriculum has been vetted and is finalized, community colleges can adopt that curriculum and get fast-track approval in the Chancellor's office. So what we're doing here is we're simplifying and streamlining the processes for local colleges, but we're also ensuring a more streamlined and uniform and consistent curriculum across the state. But it wasn't developed by somebody and imposed on us. Rather, it's developed from the faculty themselves, which makes it absolutely ideal, and of course the only thing we would stand for. So here are the results. We have a coordination of the intersegmental discipline faculty talking to one another, upper division and lower division faculty talking to one another. We have much clearer pathways for students, and you know that many students go to 2 or 3 community colleges before they transfer. By using Plan A curriculum, the transfer model curriculum, if they move from college to college, their studies are not interrupted and they shouldn't have to repeat courses. And of course, with 1440, the students are earning simultaneously an associate degree, completing their major preparation to transfer, and then they get admission priority at the university. So it's truly a win-win for everyone. So one of the questions people ask us is, what does the transfer model curriculum look like? The transfer model curriculum has a core of courses, typically 6 units. It's a little bit different in some disciplines. Plus, it has some local flexibility because one college may not teach exactly the same courses as another. So I'm going to give you an example of how it plays out. My discipline is communication. And this is the transfer model curriculum, which has been developed by intersegmental discipline faculty. The faculty said everybody must take public speaking, which, by the way, they already had to take for CSU, and it's a foundational course. And in addition, they should take 6 more units, 2 courses, but any of these courses would be fine. Argumentation, debate, interpersonal, small group, whichever the college wants to choose. So the college can either specify 2 of them that are required, or they can give the students a choice if they offer several courses. And then the transfer model curriculum for communication says that the local college should select 2 from the following list. Most of these courses are offered at most colleges. If your college doesn't teach that course, so be it, don't put it on your degree locally. But what ends up happening is when the students get to the CSU, the upper division faculty have a pretty good sense of their background, and they can assume that there's some commonality. And then finally, for the end of the 18 units, they can select any of the courses not already used or one of the following. The rest of those courses are courses actually not in communication, but they're closely related, and they're the foundational courses that to study communication for a major, you need to have some background in them. So again, there's local choice as well as statewide uniformity. So here's the rollout timeline. We have almost finalized 3 transfer model curriculum, and in the coming month, colleges will be able to develop the first 3 1440 degrees. We're delighted about this. We are also in the process of vetting several other majors, criminal justice or administration of justice, kinesiology, and we've already begun to convene groups in biology, chemistry, early childhood education, physics, and theater. In the spring, we will also open up a variety of more discipline groups so that by the end of this academic year, colleges will have a good number of new degrees developed and approved that will be ready for the fall for students beginning in the fall. And that's what the legislation said. By next fall, colleges need to begin offering some of these degrees. Next year, we'll finish it out, and we'll certainly have the top 30 done by next year, and maybe the top 20 done by fall or shortly thereafter. So what we're recommending to colleges is that they encourage the discipline faculty, the counselors, and the articulation officers to actively participate in the development and the review of the transfer model curriculum. We are suggesting that college curriculum committees and trustees begin to establish fast-track degree adoption procedures so that it doesn't take too long. And we're encouraging all faculty, including counselors, public information officers, and others, to keep informed about the implementation so that they can begin to inform students in the fall. Then what will happen in the Chancellor's office is they'll get quick approval. If you follow the TMC, it will be a fast-track approval. Hopefully, as many colleges as possible will choose the Plan A approach rather than the Plan B. And using this method, we think that colleges will have sufficient degrees in place by the fall, and we will add more majors in the during next year. We have established several resource places for people, and the last slide gives you some resource places where you'll find more information. We are, I guarantee you, giving a lot of speeches on this topic, going to a lot of conferences. We've done webinars, which have been very successful, and we're going to be doing training in the next month for college CIOs, for articulation officers, counselors, discipline faculty, curriculum chairs, etc. It's been an extremely energetic group that we've convened of faculty, and I'm absolutely delighted with the progress. They gave up their vacation last week. Most of them are still on break, certainly the CSU folks particularly. We had a 2-day retreat last week, and right before Christmas we had a 2-day retreat, and we've just made tremendous progress. So we feel really delighted about the intersegmental collaboration between the faculty of CSU and the faculty of community colleges.
I also wanted to conclude by saying that this progress would not have been possible without collaboration between our two systems, between each of the systems and their faculty, and between the faculty of the two systems. I might mention that the University of California is also watching carefully what's going on in this arena, and you know, although there was legislation intended to encourage them to consider moving in this direction as well, you know, there's a long way to go, but there's active interest, and the UC faculty are to some extent involved in the discipline review groups, and we're having continuing conversations with them about this possibly being the future of transfer in all the systems. I also want to mention the collaboration and coordination within the Chancellor's office. As I mentioned, Eric Skinner is co-chairing the committee. My colleague Barry Russell and the staff in academic affairs are critical on the whole degree adoption and approval process. Terry Carbaugh in our communications division is talking with her counterpart at the CSU Chancellor's office to make sure that we're working together on a communications plan. And my excellent staff, Jeff Spano, Dean of Student Services, and Bob Quinn, our transfer and articulation coordinator, have been hard at work collaborating with Barry's Dean, Stephanie Lowe, on the curriculum approval piece. So that's our report, and we're open to any questions you might have.
You just reminded me of one point I forgot to add in. We've determined that the name of the degree, it is still an Associate of Arts or Associate of Science. We feel really strongly about that. We don't want two-tiered degrees. But it will be noted as an AA-T or an AS-T to indicate that it was part of this program so that the students will get their priority at the CSU. Thanks.
Chancellor Scott and then Member Thomas.
Okay. Well, and this is really great progress. I appreciate the compliment that was paid to me and Chancellor Reed at the beginning. But, you know, there's a big difference between a policy and implementation. I'm reminded of the old story one time in World War I. Will Rogers was asked, how would we solve the U-boat problem that the Germans were sinking a lot of the Allied ships? And he said, well, he said, that's pretty easy. He said, we ought to freeze the ocean. And so finally somebody said, well, how in the world could you do that? He said, I'm just into policy. I'm not into implementation. So I was into policy, but these people are into implementation, and that's the tough job. And they've just done a superb job in this area. I was privileged this past week. I happened to be actually going toward lunch. And one of the persons in the Academic Senate stepped out, and they were busily at work, and they invited me to come in, and I had lunch there. And then I listened for a while to some of the discussion, which was very detailed, but there's been tremendous progress. And I just compliment the implementation task force that's worked so hard, and Jane Patton, who's done an outstanding job in working with the CSU faculty and with the community college faculty. So we're really moving ahead on this. And this will, you know, we talk about student success. Well, I can tell you that if we get this completely implemented, we're going to automatically improve student success because we're going to get more people who successfully transfer, more people who get an associate degree, and more people who get a bachelor's degree as a result of this. So this is really helping us in terms of student success, and we couldn't ask for better cooperation. I've just appreciated Jane's leadership with the Academic Senate, and Linda and Eric's work, and others that have worked on this task force, and it's really being implemented extremely well. It's a big task, and certainly Chancellor Reed and I realized that it wasn't just a matter of passing the bill, but it was going to get down to the nitty-gritty of actually implementing the bill. And I think we can be proud of what's happening.
Member Thomas and Member Baca.
I would like to echo Chancellor Scott's comments, and those were mine as well. To thank you to the Implementation Oversight Committee and the staff, the others involved. Thank you for your dedication and your hard work and how quickly you responded to this. It's just amazing how far you've gotten. And the other, thank you for an explanation of Plan A that was relatively easy for the rest of us who aren't as involved as you to understand and to be able to see where you're going with that and the detail in which you've thought about not only the college-to-college communication, but also through the Chancellor's office and the approval process, which can be sometimes rather daunting. Thank you for your attention to those details.
Member Baca.
Well, you know, this is really a great effort, and I don't think it could have happened without the leadership of Chancellor Scott and Chancellor Reed. And so, very, very appreciative of that. I attended the gathering in Anaheim. Was that November or December?
November, I think.
It's November. I lose track of these things, but you know, there were a lot of faculty there. I don't know, 200 or so.
Yeah.
And fully engaged in this, taking it very seriously. You know, as Chancellor Scott mentioned, you know, the real work is often done in the implementation, but I can't, you know, we can't lose sight that it also requires leadership to get it going and move in that direction. But certainly the leadership you've shown in terms of putting it together has been very, very excellent.
Other board comments? Okay, on behalf of all the members, thank you to you both. It's really, really impressive, particularly to see how much work will be done and things that'll be ready in fall of 2011. That's great work. Thank you so much. Okay, at this point, we have just kind of raced through this. I'm going to ask that we take a 10-minute break here so that I might huddle within Jerry and Steve and the Chancellor to maybe plan out the rest of our time here. Let Member Baum take his call. So we'll take a 10-minute break and come back right around 11:30.